My name is Dorla Davila Mendoza. I am 18 years old and I come from the Inland Empire, a region where warehouses outnumber opportunities, where communities like mine are often studied and measured and discussed, but rarely invited to design the solutions. I'm an indigenous Mexican, a woman in STEM with immigrant roots, and a proud robotics educator, civic organizer, and fighter for what is right. But the most important thing you should know about me is that I have spent my life asking one question. What happens when people are most affected by a problem are finally given the power to resolve it? That question shaped everything I build because I have learned that innovation isn't just about creating technology, but it is about deciding who gets protected by who and who can access it. And that is overall who gets a seat at the table and shape that future. I was 7 years old, I started teaching robotics in rural Mexico. I remember looking at students who were just curious, creative, and capable as anyone that I ever knew. But they lacked resources to explore those possibilities, and I couldn't understand why. Why should a child's future depend on their geography, their postal code, or where they were born? Why should the opportunity be something that you inherit instead of something that every person deserves? So I built Código Da Vinci. What happened is that I built a small robotics project that overall reached 467 students across rural communities, where we brought engineering education to students who had never imagined themselves as scientists, programmers, or even inventors. But I learned something far more important than robotics, that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And that became my foundation and my life's work. A few years later, in my own life, it changed completely. My family and I were forced to leave Mexico, and we left our home, community, and a life that we knew. When we arrived to the US, we carried everything we owned in new bags, and I entered a new country without speaking English fluently, without a support or any network, and without knowing if I would ever face its stability again. For years, my family experienced housing insecurities and food instability. I moved through uncertainty while trying to keep up with school, as I was learning a new language, a new culture, and a new identity all at once. I know what it feels like to walk into a room and wonder whether you belong. I know and understand what it feels like to be underestimated by everybody who knows your name. But I also learned something new, that the communities that struggle the most are often the ones that hold us the deepest understanding and will find need to change. And that understanding is not weakness, but it's an expertise. When I arrived in my community, I didn't find the solutions I needed, so I helped build them. I found other immigrant students who were navigating the same challenges, and together we created a support system to help each other learn our rights, practice English, and recognize that our stories are not barriers, but they're the source of our inspiration and strength. I began by organizing around immigrant justice, LGBTQ+ rights, public health, education equity, and climate change. That's when I realized something, that these systems around us were never designed with communities like mine in the center, but we decided that we needed to stop waiting for someone and start redesigning them ourselves. I founded Civic Act because I believe that democracy can not only belong to people old enough to vote or people with only one mindset, but that young people and the youth are not the future leaders, but they're the leaders of today. We are experiencing the consequences of today's decisions, and therefore we deserve a seat at the table where those decisions are made. Everything I've ever built comes from the same belief, that those people closest to the problem are often the ones closest to the solution. That belief led me to create Civic Act, a youth-led innovation organization that transforms student ideas into community action. Following the Sustainable Development Goals and the California Civic Seal of Engagement, we built student leadership programs, created spaces for dialogue across different spaces, and helped young people move from feeling powerless to becoming active participants in their own democracy. We partner with organizations like the Western Justice Center to host mediation spaces where I believe conflict should not be something communities avoid, but it's something that they can use to transform. We worked alongside Sustainable Claremont, a climate advocacy organization that helped us lobby and advocate for $1.2 million of environmental investments because young people should not wait until adulthood to protect their environments and the planet that they will inherit. And when that funding was paused, the students didn't just give up. Well, we rallied, lobbied, and are still in the legislative research process of trying to advocate for our own communities. Not only that, but we facilitated conversations about democracy because democracy is not something that we inherit, but it's something that every generation must understand and build. Overall, my work has never been limited to one issue alone. Because communities do not experience problems separately and in boxes. A student struggling with air pollution may be also struggling with asthma. A student struggling with housing insecurity can also be struggling academically. And an immigrant family navigating the healthcare barriers may also be navigating language barriers and just fear. These challenges facing generations are interconnected, so our solutions must be too. That is why I have worked across public health, technology, education, and environmental justice. Because the future will not be solved by people in isolated fields, but will be solved by people who can connect them, see the impact, care about the people, and build long-lasting systems. Fundamentally, this is why I chose code plus consciousness. Because artificial intelligence will become one of the most powerful forces shaping our generation and the future. But technology itself cannot be automatically seen as progress. Progress depends on those voices that to be included, on whose experiences are to be considered. An algorithm does not appear out of nowhere, but it reflects the assumptions, priorities, and blind spots of the people who build it. And when the people designing technology do not represent the communities impacted by it, entire populations can be left behind. We are already seeing this happen, where algorithms can reinforce racial bias, automated systems can deepen inequality, and digital platforms can amplify misinformation. And communities that have historically been ignored become more invisible in the eyes of these systems and technologies that will shape their lives. But I do not believe that the answer is simply to fear technology. Fear-mongering and just inexperienced people can lead to wars and consequences. I believe that the answer is to democratize it. We need more young people, more women, more immigrants, and more historically excluded communities at the center, not only utilizing the technology, but designing it. And this is why I have focused my work in responsible innovation, where I co-founded EcoLens, an AI-powered environmentally policy tool using data to help communities understand local environmental challenges. I have researched algorithmic bias and AI governance, and have developed AI literacy education because students should not just use artificial intelligence blindly, but should learn the harms and the impacts that their users can cause. I have also developed a really large network of other people working on AI and have researched in deepfakes and how that can lead to more gender violence and can systemically impact women. They should understand how it affects their rights, their opportunities, and their future. Because technology is not just simply a code, but technology is power. And a question that our generation must simply ask is, what can AI do? But more reframe that to, who does AI serve? If selected for Aspen Ideas, I want to bring back more than just inspiration. I want to build back infrastructure. When I return home, I want to build the Community Futures Lab, a civic innovation hub where the people closest to the community challenges become the architects of it. As too often, communities like mine are approached as problems to be solved, where young people are often surveyed and families are studied but not included. Communities are given just simply solutions rather than letting them design them. And I want to be somebody that changes that. The lab will bring together people from across the Inland Empire and LA County, ranging from students, people with lived experiences, local leaders, and nonprofit partners, to collaboratively address the challenges shaping our generation. Each cohort will focus on one urgent issue facing our communities, whether that is workforce access, health, education, or housing. But this will not be a traditional leadership program, as participants will move from identifying problems to designing the solutions. Through community dialogue, design thinking, and research, young people will gather lived experiences, analyze the root causes, and develop the prototypes. At the end, testing the solutions alongside other partners to help them build those solutions that go beyond the classroom. They will present their recommendations to local decision makers, organizations, and funders, transforming youth voices into actionable policy and investment. Because I believe that lived experience is not just a story. It is data, it is expertise, and it is a form of leadership. My goal is not to create just another program that exists for young people, but instead, my goal is to create an ecosystem where young people are trusted as co designers of the future. And I believe that the Community Futures Lab is about changing who gets to imagine solution, who gets to influence decisions, and who gets to build the systems that shape communities. Because the future should not be designed by for communities like mine, but it should be signed by us, with us, and for us. I am applying to Aspen Ideas because I have spent years building with determination, creativity, and whatever resources I could find. I have built movements from classrooms, programs from conversations, and solutions while navigating my own uncertainty. But I know that passion alone is not enough. To create lasting change, I need strategy and I need support. I need to learn from people who have transformed ideas into institutions, and I need to be surrounded by young leaders who are asking the same questions and have the same mindsets of how do we redesign systems that are never built for anybody. How do we ensure emerging technologies strengthen democracy instead of weakening it? And how do we create a future where someone's birthplace does not determine their possibilities? What I bring to Aspen is not just my story and my skills. I bring the perspective of communities that have often been discussed but rarely included. I bring the perspective of an Indigenous immigrant woman in STEM who has experienced what happens when systems fail people, and who has spent her life trying to build alternatives and long-lasting change. I know how to translate between worlds, between languages, cultures, communities, and institutions. And I want to use that ability to help people build a future where more people have the power to shape decisions that affect their lives.